Hello everybody, and welcome to Starcraft 2. So, I've got a quick announcement to make. I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail on this because there is going to be an NDA on it, but in short, the developers of Stormgate Frost Giant have invited me to play in the closed alpha that's coming up soon. So, as a result, and then just in case you're not aware, right, Stormgate is a new RTS that's going to be coming out soon-ish. I don't know exactly when. They haven't specified a release date yet. But it's a new RTS developed by a bunch of the same people who used to work for Blizzard, who developed other classic RTS games. Your Warcraft 3, Starcraft, Starcraft 2, those kinds of people. They got together, they formed a company, and now they're trying to basically make a new RTS, and that is Stormgate. Now, because I've been invited to play in the closed alpha, and because I haven't played any RTS games for over a year now, I want to shake off some rust before I get into testing Stormgate, right? I want to give it my best shot. I want to test Stormgate to the best of my ability, so that way I can give good, honest feedback to Frost Giant. Again, I'm not going to be able to go into details. I'm not even going to show you guys the confirmation email because, again, I don't want to step on any toes, right? But I'm super excited. I'm super stoked to be able to go into that closed alpha. So really looking forward to it. So like I said, I want to shake off that rust, and StarCraft 2 is my favorite RTS. There's a lot of great RTSs out there, but StarCraft 2 is my favorite. So yeah, we're going to play some StarCraft 2. I think the way I want to approach it is basically the way how I approached it when I first started getting into StarCraft 2, right? I'm going to want to play through the campaigns. I'm thinking I'm just going to play them on normal so I can just chew through them super fast. Just play through the campaigns super fast. And then from there, I can go into versus mode, right? And actually start to ladder, get my RTS chops back before I go into the closed alpha test for Stormgate. Now, just as a quick disclaimer, right, because I know StarCraft is a very elite kind of game. The community is very elite at this point. The community is very stable at this point. There's a lot of amazing people playing this game. Just as, a quick disclaimer, the best I've ever gotten at StarCraft 2 is Masters. And that was a while ago. Now that I'm a father, a husband, with a very high role at a company for my job, where I'm always busy at my job, I don't have the time to be able to dedicate to getting better at StarCraft, or any other RTS for that matter. So while I am going to ladder, I don't expect to get back into Masters. I expect maybe to get into Diamond, right? I might even be as low as Platinum, who knows? Who even knows, right? But I am going to play. I do want to shake the rust off. I do want to give Stormgate a really good shake. Give them good, honest, best feedback I possibly can. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into StarCraft. So I'm going to go ahead and treat this, again, as like a tutorial-ish series, kind of like how I've been doing Factorio, right? So if you were to install StarCraft, by the way, you should. It's free to play, and if you haven't played StarCraft 2 before, highly recommend it. One of the greatest games of all time. It really is. So when you first load into StarCraft, if you haven't played it before, it's going to immediately prompt you to do tutorial. So you're going to get a screen that looks like this one, right? And we're going to go ahead and play through the tutorials as if we're new. And then what I'll do is I'll go through the settings with you guys, because there's some settings that I think you should tweak and change in StarCraft 2 before you really start diving into it. So I'm going to go ahead and pretend I'm a beginner, right? I'm a veteran at this point, I think. I mean, the crazy thing about StarCraft, and I think Factorio as well, is no matter how good you get, you still feel like you're bad at the game. Because there's always, there's always players much better than you. Like, I'll still occasionally pull up a StarCraft 2 tournament and watch, the likes of Maru, Serral, Raynor, Dark, plenty of other players as well. I mean, there's just so many amazing players. Big Gabe, I forgot his name though. But yeah, Big Gabe. Anyway, so many good players out there. Hearthstone. And all of these players are absolutely incredible, right? Professional StarCraft 2 players. So obviously their skill level is way, leagues above mine. But even within Master League itself, going from Masters 3 to Masters 2 is a huge jump. Going from Masters 2 to Masters 1 is a huge jump, right? The skill difference between the different levels of the StarCraft 2 ladder is quite enormous, right? So even if I got back into Masters, I would probably be a low Masters, right? the skill jump between low and high masters is huge, and the skill difference between high masters and grandmasters is huge, and the difference between low grandmasters and top grandmasters is absolutely enormous. So as a result, you always feel like you're not great at the game. But yeah, probably a veteran. But I'm going to go ahead and click beginner anyway, because that's what you guys should click if you haven't played before. So it's going to give you the beginner tutorial. It's going to walk you through basic training. Let's do it. Alrighty, so welcome to Starcraft 2, strategy game of economy and base management where you command your armies and gain control of the battlefield to defeat your enemies. You can repeat this tutorial as often as you'd like before leading your armies to glory in the single-player campaigns. Good luck. Tips will appear down here. I don't really read them anymore, but please feel free to.
Welcome to the Dominion Future Commander Training Simulation module. Here you will learn to use our interface and issue orders to your forces. Begin by left-clicking on a unit to select it.
Been waiting on you.
Information about the selected unit is displayed at the bottom of the screen. Additionally, the commands for this unit are displayed in the bottom right. It is time to issue a command. Right-click the beacon to order the Marine to move to it.
Alright, so immediately, the first thing I'm going to tell you is if you are learning a real-time strategy game, it doesn't matter if it's StarCraft, Age of Empires, Command and Conquer, doesn't matter. Any real-time strategy.
Beacon to order the Marine to move to it.
Thanks, Adjutant. I'm just going to pause you then. So, whenever you're going to learn any real-time strategy game, it is okay to look down here to learn what the hotkeys are. It's also okay to update the hotkeys in settings, right? Which I do, and I'll walk you through those, the updates that I made. But I don't make too many updates. But it's okay to update the hotkeys as well, so that way it works better for you. But you should never click on a button down here, right? You should be clicking around up here, up, down here, down here. You don't got time to click on individual action commands down here. So look at the hotkey, force yourself to learn the hotkeys, use the hotkeys, you will be so much faster. But anyway, right click to move. You could push M click to move, but nobody does that, just right click.
Recruit. Next, you will learn the attack move order. This is another way to instruct the Marine to move, but he will automatically attack any enemies along the way.
Sweet.
Give the attack move order now. Press the attack key to enter the targeting mode, then left-click the ground to confirm your target location.
Alright, the hotkey for that is A, so A, left click. This is on a very slow setting speed, right? When we get into the campaign, I'm going to go into the same speed that you play multiplayer in. Yeah, I can follow basic instructions!
An overview of the battlefield. It is located in the bottom left section of the screen. You may adjust your view of the battlefield anytime by moving your mouse to the edges of the screen.
By default, this moves a lot slower. I increased this, and I'll show you how.
Detected. I will send you additional reinforcements. You can also left-click the minimap to... Very good, Commander. Your aptitude scores have exceeded the current average.
Yay, I'm smart.
You will need to select all of your Marines before engaging the hostile units. Left-click and hold to drag a box around your units. This will result in their selection.
So there's actually a couple of ways to do it. You can do box, right, which is the most common way to do it. If you want to select all units of one type, you can hold down control and left-click as well. But yeah.
The Dominion prizes cooperation. You may order a group of units in the same manner you would order an individual.
So right-click to move, A-click to attack. I typically A-click behind, but it's okay to A-click just in front too. It's fine. I typically A-click behind. Oh, psh, it won't let me micro them back.
Your completion of this exercise has placed you in the 90th percentile of all Dominion recruits.
Yay.
Receiving transmission. Command simulation terminated.
I'm
Listen
smart.
up. We've got a situation that needs a commander, and you're the best recruit we've seen for months. What do you say? Ready for some field experience?
Yes, please. I'm tired of just moving Marines around. So now it's going to send us through a few scenarios to, again, just teach us the basics of the game, right? As we play the campaign, we're going to also learn the basics, and I'm going to use the campaign as a great teaching tool to teach you the mechanics of StarCraft 2, right? So Awesome. But yeah, these will teach you the bare basics. I also am going to check to see if I can increase the game speed in the tutorials because I don't like playing at such a slow speed, but it's all good. All right, so stage 2, field duty. It gives you a breakdown of what these things are, right? So an SCV is your worker. Your workers gather resources such as minerals and Vespene gas. I think in this tutorial it's only going to have you mine minerals. Totally fine, right? Supply depot increases your supply to allow you to build more stuff. The maximum supply you can create in the game is 200. The command center is your primary structure. You use that to train workers as well as do a few other things like scan sweep, call down mules, things like that. Change it into a planetary fortress for defense. Your Marines are a basic combat unit trained out of the barracks. They can shoot both ground and air. They are very powerful, especially with certain upgrades. And then barracks, which trains basic infantry units. That includes the Marines. There's other infantry units as well, but we'll learn about them as we go.
Welcome to Taurus 4. Not my favorite planet in the sector. Some of our science officers went out looking for Protoss artifacts last week, and those eggheads haven't returned yet. It can get ugly out there. I need you to establish a base and send out a search party.
Okay.
Your command center's landing now. You're gonna need some SCVs to handle your mining and construction. We're low on stored minerals, so let's get the SCVs gathering them.
Alright, so grab your SCVs, right click on minerals. You can even split, it's fine, but I'm not going to. I'm also going to start using hotkeys. I'll explain hotkeys once we get into the campaign. I'm going to use hotkeys.
Check the top right corner of your screen.
Wow, I'm still tapping 151515, 5 being where I put my barracks. Maybe I don't need to shake the rust off. Old habits die hard. Alright, so let's build more SCVs.
You're getting the hang of this. SCVs take time to get ready.
I want to build a supply depot because I only have up to 11 I can build, and I think it's going to supply block me to teach about supply depots.
Set up an objective for you at the top left of your screen so you can track your progress. Don't bother thanking me.
Okay, well thank you anyway. I'm going to go ahead and just queue up 2. I'm just going to queue up 2 because why not? Queue up 2, queue up 2, queue up 2. You'll see a lot of players just kind of boxing at the beginning of the game. It's a warm-up maneuver. At least for me it is. It's a warm-up maneuver. As the game progresses, you have to play faster and faster and faster, right? As you're doing more and more and more stuff. So it's a warm-up maneuver. It's also used to practice boxing, right? Increasing your accuracy. Like, I just want to select that guy. I just want to select that guy. I want to select these 2 guys. That kind of thing.
Nothing's free out here. Everyone on this base costs us a certain
Yeah,
amount
it's
of
supply
supplies.
block, I guess.
Up in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see the current supply amount and its limits. Reach the limit, and we can't train anyone else.
That's right.
Is that SCVs can set up supply depots to increase our limit. Go on and order an SCV to build a supply depot.
So we've hit that limit, right? We have 11 out of 11. So as a result, we can't train any more SCVs. See, it's stopped. So we have to have an SCV, create a supply depot. Ideally, you build a supply depot before. And then what I'm doing is I'm shift right clicking on the mineral patch so that way he can build a supply depot and then he'll immediately go back to mine resources because you can queue up commands. So I pushed B for build, S for supply depot, left click to place, shift right click on the mineral patch to queue up the command to have him go back to do more minerals.
That's right.
Sweet. So now we've got more supply. You can see this, the SCVs are going again. I think I'm only going to need one more SCV because the workers here gives you the total, right? So 12 out of 12 is the maximum.
Next thing we're going to need is a barracks to train our troops for combat.
Hooray, barracks!
Select an SCV and order him to start building one.
Excellent, let's do it. B, and then left click, shift, right click. And then I like to hotkey. I'll explain hotkeys once we get to the campaign. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. You can also set a rally point by right-clicking on the ground from the building, so that way when you train Marines to come out of the barracks, they will go there. They will go there on move command, though. That means that if you are currently being attacked, your Marines will run right past whoever's attacking you to go here before they start attacking.
Training some Marines.
Anyway,
We'll need 5 of them
Marines.
before we push out. Your objective has been updated so you can keep track.
Well, I guess I'll just queue up the 5. Well, I'm gonna build a second barracks. Because I'm floating minerals. One of the things in StarCraft 2 that is key is you want to spend your resources. You don't want to be floating resources or storing resources. It's better to spend them because if you're spending them, that means your base is growing. You're building an army, you're building more economy, you're spending your resources that you're gathering. Saving resources doesn't really give you anything. There we go. With 2 barracks, we can start cranking out Marines at an even faster rate. Again, we don't need more workers. We're fine. So I'm just going to keep cranking out Marines. I'm debating whether or not to build a 3rd barracks, but at least in a tutorial, it's not necessary.
Let's get those Marines on the move. Time to find those missing scientists. Hold on, Commander. I'm receiving some intel from our scanner suite. It's detecting Zerg biosignatures in this area. We're going to have to be real careful with this one. Use your attack move command while exploring. Then your Marines will be on their guard if they come across enemies.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I move ordered him on purpose. There we go. You want to keep building stuff while you're attacking. So there's plenty of multitasking in StarCraft 2. Keep trying to build stuff while you're attacking. Alright, up next we're going to learn how to play the Zerg. So the Zerg play quite differently than the Terran. It's very, very, very unique. And you'll get a good idea about what I mean in just a little bit. So Overlords increase your supply, but they can also fly. So they're used a lot for scouting and things like that, right? They are a unit that increases your supply. So they're like a floating supply depot. Zergling is your basic combat unit. They are small, but fast, but weak. Until the end game when you get some really key research in, then they're really destructive, right? But anyway, Zerglings are small, weak, but fast. And they spawn in pairs. So they're really good for swarming, creating large numbers very quickly. Hatchery is the primary structure where you're going to be building everything from, right? Drones, which are your workers, and combat units like the Zerglings. They're all built from the hatchery, from larvae. The larva is what you use to morph units. And then you have your tech buildings that unlock the units that can spawn from larvae. So the spawning pool unlocks the Zerglings. A roach warren unlocks roaches. So once you build the tech building, you can build the unit. That's the idea.
A new minion. I am your broodmother, and you will serve me to the death.
Okay.
First, you will make the Terrans suffer for their interference on this planet. I will join you soon with reinforcements. Prepare this hive cluster for my arrival.
Okay, can do. So they already sent the drones to mine for us, which is nice.
Is the heart of our hive cluster. It automatically spawns
So S to select your larva, and then you'll spawn units from the larva once it gives us the ability to do so. Like I said, the Overlord can move. It moves slowly, but it can move. So again, very helpful for scouting. So you can do something like move him over here and see what's going on over there. Okay, so S and then V for Overlord. And then again, you can queue him to go somewhere. So I'm going to queue him to go over here. Back when I was really good at the game, Zerg was my main race. Just a heads up. Playing this time, I'm probably going to play random, though, because I find that more fun. Again, I'm not going to be super ladder serious. Alright, so I'm going to need some more drones. Your hatchery periodically spawns larvae up to a max of 3 at a time.
But before you can create one, you will need a spawning pool. Order a drone to mutate into one now.
Okay, so grab a drone. Push B to build. and then S for spawning pool once we have the resources. I've been constantly building drones, so that's been keeping the resources down. It wasn't expecting me to do that.
Click the mutate into spawning pool button.
I will. Hold on. There we go. Alright.
Click on mutating the drone into a structure.
So we lose the drone. If we cancel the building right now, we'll get the drone back. But once the building completes, we lose the drone. So we need to make sure that we keep building drones to replace any drones we lose when we create buildings. You always lose drones when you create buildings. So I'm build another overlord, so that way we have plenty of supply available.
That spawning pool looks noxious and fetid. Good. Now morph your lava into zerglings.
So S and then hold Z. There we go. You can hotkey eggs directly into your army. Again, I'll explain that in more detail, but you can hotkey eggs, which is very helpful, so that way you can give them commands, so that way they go exactly where you want them to go on the way out. Another thing you may notice is the hatchery has 2 rally points, one on the resources for the drones to go, and one for the army units to go.
But to do so, you will require Vespine gas. There is a Vespine geyser nearby.
B.
Excellent. First, you must order a drone to morph into an extractor above the geyser.
Yes, please. Alright, E. So B for build, E for extractor, place.
Finished. Other drones will be able to harvest gas from it.
You will use 3 drones to harvest gas in 99% of cases. So that's why I built some extra drones here. So that way I can move them immediately into gas once it's done. There we go.
Yes. The amount of gas you have gathered is shown in the top right corner.
Now it's probably going to have us build a roach warren, so I'm going to build another drone to replace it, because I already know I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to select the drone. And then B for build, R for roach warren. It wants me to build it over there? Okay, fall, fine.
Your mind is also evolving.
Is it? I don't know if it is. I'm just going to chill, let the game kind of tell me what to do in this case. I'm tempted to just get another overlord again just to further expand the supply out, because it's going to have me build roaches. And roaches are rather supply intensive. Each roach I think takes 2 supply, so it really inflates your supply really quickly.
Ready. You may begin morphing roaches.
Alright, so hatchery, select your hatchery, push S for larva, hold down R for roaches. There's some Windows settings that you'll also want to change in order to make holding down the button work better. So I'll show you that too. Once I go into settings, I'll show you. Alright, there's our roaches.
To command my brood, do not disappoint me. Let the Terrans tremble before us.
Again, keep building while you go.
Fight on. Bring their base to ruin.
I need more overlords.
Finish them. Destroy their base.
I'm gonna move some of these guys into the mineral line and attack their workers first. These guys can keep working on the building, that's fine.
Have claimed this world and all on it.
Nice victory! Okay, now finally the Protoss. They also play different from the Terran, but not quite as different as the Zerg. Again, the Zerg is very unique. The Protoss is also unique, of course, right? All 3 races are very unique from each other, but I feel like Protoss is closer to Terran than Zerg is. Alright, so Protoss. You have probes. Probes are your workers. You also use probes to warp in structures. So it's kind of like build, but you warp it in. It doesn't keep the probe there, though. You can start the warp in process, have the probe go do something else immediately. It doesn't get stuck like an SCV does. You don't lose it like the Zerg does. The Nexus allows you to warp in additional probes. It also has some abilities as well, such as Chrono Boost in order to speed production up. Pylons increase your supply, so they're the supply depot of the Protoss. They also have a power field around them, and all buildings other than Nexi must be within the power field in order to function. So they place the gateway, which builds your basic units, here within the warp field. So that way it will actually warp in and work. After the building is warped in, if your pylon is destroyed by the enemy, the building depowers and it does not function until you restore power by placing pylons. So it's usually good practice to put more than one pylon around the general area, so that way if one pylon gets destroyed, it's okay, you don't lose power. So let's go in.
Heed me, warriors. We have intercepted a Terran distress signal from Taurus 4. The Zerg have invaded the planet. We shall not let this stand. We must eradicate the enemy at once.
Stalkers, sweet. Stalkers are awesome.
The Terran transmission originated.
Alright, let's go kill stuff.
It appears their warriors have already been infested by the Zerg. We must give them peace in death.
Another good thing about the Protoss, or another thing, is that they have shields that take damage before the HP takes damage.
Are protected by their shields.
The shields will regenerate.
Generate quickly unless they take further damage. We have
Thank
to
you.
go further.
Thank you,
We must
Executor.
know how far the Zerg infestation has spread.
Thank you, Executor. I appreciate you explaining shields for me. I should just let them do the talking. After all, it's the tutorial, right?
It is as I feared. This world is consumed.
Look at
I
all
shall
that
go with
stuff.
our aid to cleanse it. We will soon be outnumbered by the Zerg. We must fall back to safety. Our stalkers should be able to cross.
You can use the blink ability to teleport a short distance with stalkers.
But we can reactivate them and hold here until the Armada arrives.
Alright.
Our gateways need a pylon to power them. Order a probe to warp in a pylon nearby.
Alright, so B for build, E for pylon. Let's go.
Pylons will power.
And then you can immediately send it back to work. You don't need to build it. It warps in by itself once you start the warp in process.
We assign them to other tasks after they have initiated the warp process. The gateways are now active. Let us use them to warp in zealots.
Alright, I'm just going to wait for 200 so that way I can sync them up. There we go. Again, I'm just going to maximize the worker counts here. You could throw more workers on, that's fine. I believe it's only counting 2 per patch because that's the optimal. You can go up to 3 per patch and still get some benefit. But after 2 per patch, the benefit drops. So 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh no, I think it is doing 3 per patch. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, it's doing 3 per patch for that count.
Zealots told me.
I know, I'm waiting for 200 again. There we go. Zealots are your basic ground unit. They only attack ground. They are rather tanky, which is nice. So you use them to tank for you, while your heavy, while your more damaging units deal damage from the back.
Excellent. We now have enough zealots. But we cannot withstand the fight ahead without additional stalkers. We will require a cybernetics core in order to warp them in.
Sounds good. So build, and then Y for cybernetics core by default.
Fine work. Stalkers will help us.
I'm also going to build an additional pylon because we're getting close to getting supply capped. So another pylon will be good. Alright, cybernetics core is warped in. We should be able to start doing stalkers shortly.
Done. Initiate warp sequences for the stalkers at our gateways.
Alright, I'm only going to be able to build one at a time. I'm not getting enough resources to be able to build 2 at a time. So I'm just going to queue them up as I get the resources for it rather than waiting for the buildings to be in sync. Which is fine. It's fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Sometimes I just click around because I'm bored. I get bored when the gameplay is relatively slow, but that's okay. It speeds up. I'm just mashing the S key.
We have enough stalkers to proceed, but we must still be cautious, our nexus point. Warriors, ready your blades.
You want the zealots to be in front.
We must hold.
I'm going to throw down another pylon. Again, you have the zealots tank while your stalkers deal damage. I'm going to pull back the wounded one. There we go.
Your bravery has brought us victory, my warriors.
Let's kill.
Has arrived.
Oh, never mind. I guess I'm not going to kill. The Golden Armada will kill.
We are the swarm, numberless, merciless.
Initiating mass recall.
Weaklings, you retreat in the face of battle.
No, we strike as one.
Pretty sweet. So you can kind of see the dynamic of each race, right? The Terran is your pretty well balanced, more typical RTS type of race, right? They build stuff, they produce stuff out of whatever they build in a queue, right? Pretty straightforward. The Zerg are very unique. Their kind of thing is that they need to expand, consume the map, gather tons of resources because individually their units are typically weaker than the other two races. So you'll need additional resources to swarm and overwhelm your opponent. That's the typical idea. That's not always the case, but that's the typical idea. And then Protoss, the typical idea is that their units are stronger but more expensive. So they're the high-tech lasers go pew-pew race, which is pretty cool. I gotta admit, I like lasers. I like pew-pew. It's pretty sweet. All right, so we've done the tutorials. Exit. Cool. So now you can go into the campaign, co-op, or jump right into versus mode. Co-op are also campaign-style missions, but you play with an additional player. You can either have an additional person in your party, or you can queue up and play with random people, right? So it's 2v campaign scenario. Campaign is a single-player campaign. Versus is versus. There's 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, and free-for-all. There's also an arcade, which is not listed here, but there's an arcade as well that has custom games built by the user community, which is sweet. Cool. So yeah. Anyway, real quick, let's go into settings and then we'll call this a video, right? So as far as the settings that you'll want, first let's go into Windows. So I'm going to hit Windows key here. I'm going to go ahead and open up Windows. Welcome to my Windows. Anyway, so you're going to want to go into the control panel. So control panel. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to keyboard. So we're going to go and just search for keyboard. Keyboard. And then here in keyboard, I've already changed it, but you're going to notice that there is a repeat delay. And that goes from long to short, and I believe the default is somewhere around here, right? The repeat delay determines how long it takes while you're holding something to go from the first letter that you're holding to continually repeating it, right? So a long repeat delay, for example, this is really extreme, right? Is I hold down the A key, and you can see it delays, and then it finally repeats, right? So a shorter repeat delay is better for StarCraft, right? Because you want to be able to hold down a key, for example, especially for Zerg. You want to be able to hold down a key and just have it immediately start repeating, right? So change the repeat delay to short. You can see there's almost no delay here now, which is excellent. And then the repeat rate is how fast it repeats, right? So again, slower for a slow repeat rate. That's way too slow. So you want a faster repeat rate. Boom. There you go. That way you can hold stuff down, get stuff done fast. And that's it. There's also mouse settings as well. You want to disable enhanced pointer precision. So that way as your mouse moves, it moves exactly where you tell it to move rather than Windows guessing where it wants to move. That does make navigating the desktop a little bit harder, typically, but it does help benefit in the game. All right, so StarCraft settings. So I'm going to push F10 to open the menu here. Let's go to options. The graphics settings, I'll let you guys fiddle with those. I'm playing on extreme because I've got a powerful enough PC to handle it. I'm playing on 1440p resolution because that's my monitor. I'm playing at 240 Hz refresh rate because that's my monitor's refresh rate. I typically turn off vertical sync, but you can keep it on if you want. I typically turn it off. Some settings impact the CPU more than other settings. And Starcraft 2 is a very CPU intensive game. It's not a very GPU intensive game. Starcraft 2 will run on basically any GPU, but it's a very CPU intensive game. So that means if you're struggling to run Starcraft 2 on higher settings, you'll want to lower the settings that impact the CPU first, right? So that will be things like, and then as you hover over a setting, it'll tell you what it impacts, right? Whether it impacts the graphics card or whether it impacts the CPU, right? So shaders impact your graphics card. Lighting impacts your graphics card. Shadows impact your graphics card. Terrain impacts your graphics card. Reflections impacts your CPU. So you can turn that off. If you're struggling to get a high frame rate, it's probably your CPU being bottlenecked, not your GPU. So turn off reflections, for example. Effects also rely on your CPU, so turn effects down if you're struggling. Texture quality relies on your GPU, the amount of VRAM you have. Post-processing relies on graphics card. Physics is CPU. So again, lower the physics or completely turn them off if you are struggling to run the game at a high frame rate. Models impacts your GPU. Unit portraits being 3D or 2D impacts your GPU. Movies impact your CPU, but in-game it doesn't matter, so you can leave it wherever you want it. And then indirect shadows impacts your GPU. So play with those, set them to whatever works best for your computer. For sound, these are my settings. By default, some of these settings are a little bit different. The soundtrack, for example, defaults to just StarCraft 2. You can change it to StarCraft Brood War if you prefer that soundtrack, or you can have all like I do, because I enjoy both soundtracks. So, awesome. I also upped the sound channels to have more sound channels. You probably won't really hear the difference, or at least I don't. I don't have a very discerning ear though, so maybe you'll be able to hear the difference. Either way, I turn it up. I also turned on subtitles, that way you guys can read as it goes. Okay, mouse and keyboard. So here I disabled enable mouse sensitivity, so that way my mouse moves at the same speed as it does on my desktop in Windows. If you enable mouse sensitivity, you'll be able to speed up or slow down the mouse specifically within StarCraft. Enable mouse wheel zoom, you'll want to have checked, so that way you can scroll your mouse wheel up in order to zoom in, scroll your mouse wheel down to zoom back out. It's helpful when you're trying to see invisible units like observers, Dark Templar, things like that. Reduce mouse lag, you can turn it on. I typically don't have an issue with this, but you can turn it on to make the mouse more responsive at the expense of frame rate. Smart basically confines the mouse cursor within the window as long as StarCraft feels like it needs to be within the window. You can choose to have it off. I would never have it to off because then your mouse will be able to leave, and there's the screen scrolling, right? So you want to have your mouse locked in, so either on or smart. Cursor size, this is the default size. If you want your mouse to be bigger or smaller, up to you. Enable mouse scroll is what allows you to scroll the screen on the edges. By default, the scroll speed is around 20%. I bump it up to, I thought this was set to 80. I bump it up to 80%. I want the screen scroll speed to be quick. Keyboard scroll is using the arrow keys. Drag scroll is by clicking the mouse scroll wheel. You can then drag the camera around while the middle mouse button is clicked. So yeah, this is really good for trying to center your base for creating location hotkeys, which I'll go into later. Gameplay. So these are the gameplay settings I recommend. These are not the defaults. I don't remember the defaults, but these are what I recommend. Show alerts you can enable if you want. It's going to show text over here on the left, like if you need more supply depots, if you need more minerals, if you need more Vespene gas, for whatever it is you're trying to do. If there's an issue, it will show it in red text over here in addition to your announcer announcing the issue. Display build grid is really helpful, especially for Terran and Protoss in order to help build walls. Zerg also builds walls sometimes, but Terran and Protoss do it more. Always show the worker status. I have that checked because you want to see if there's any idle workers at any time. Especially helpful with Terran, right? Because Terran SCVs are stuck building whatever building until the building is built. And if you forget to shift queue them back to have a different command, this will let you know, oh, hey, that SCV is done. Let me make sure I go deal with him so that way he's just not sitting there being useless. Disable the simple command card. I don't know why the simple command card exists. It was intended for new players in order to minimize the amount of information that they had to absorb at once. You can try it out if you want to, but just disable it. Current order indicator I like, so that way when you tell units to do something, when you right click or attack move, you'll be able to see the indicator on the ground even after you've issued the command when you select the units who are following the command, so you know exactly where they're going at all times. Select all larvae basically selects all the larvae when you click on a single larva from the hatchery. You can disable that if you really want to just be able to select one individual larva, but typically select all larvae is fine. I typically just select the hatchery and push S to select all the larvae anyway. Enable enemy unit selection for some reason is disabled by default. You want to check this so that way you can click on enemy units, especially in 1v1, to see things like what their upgrades are, right? Whether they're ahead of you in upgrades. You want to be able to check all sorts of other stats as well. How powerful they are, how much HP they have, that kind of thing. Being able to select the enemy units is really helpful, particularly for checking their upgrade status. Are they running attack upgrades and defense upgrades? Are they level 1, 2, or 3? That kind of thing. Display experience points does clutter the screen a little bit. Basically, as you kill units or as you build things, you'll see little white number pop up, right? And that's experience points in order to level up your profile. The experience points is helpful to have on, though, because occasionally there will be situations, especially with Protoss Tempest, for example, where you will fire something and the enemy will pull back before your attack hits it back into the fog of war, so you won't see the attack actually hit. But if the attack does hit after they've pulled off screen, like into the fog of war where you can't see them anymore, and it kills the unit, you'll still see the experience points pop up. So you'll be able to tell whether or not you actually killed the thing that you tried to kill before they pulled back. And again, it particularly impacts Protoss Tempests because they're very, very, very long-range units. And it's very common to shoot off a Tempest shot and then for the opponent to panic and pull their stuff back, and you want to see whether or not you killed the thing that you intended to kill with the Tempests. Allow Windows restore is fine. Basically, if you queue up for a game and you decide to Alt-Tab out and do something else, the game will automatically pop back up once it's found a game. Alright, colors, do what you want. This is the default. I just left it at default. Do what you want. If you prefer different colors, great, awesome, cool, up to you. Social, I don't mind mature language, so I disable it. It's enabled by default. I do like to see the timestamps just so that way I can see who messaged me when. If I do join any particular channels, I like to rejoin them when I relaunch the game. I don't like to see channel chat in-game, right? It's a bit distracting, so I disabled that. When you switch modes, right? So if you go into the co-op tab, or if you go into the arcade tab, there are co-op tab chats. There are arcade chats, right? You can have the game auto-join those chats for you. I don't like to do that, but you can. Yeah. And then privacy settings. I have all the privacy settings set. Enable the players near you list really only impacts you if you have multiple people playing StarCraft and for some reason they're not already on your friends list on the same network as you. It will be able to call those people out like, hey, this person on your network near you is also playing StarCraft 2. So you can add them as a friend or add them to your party or whatever. I think it's enabled by default. I don't uncheck it. Why not? Whatever. Cool. Language and region. I live on the East Coast in the United States. Sometimes it's best to go ahead and select where you want the server to be. I typically let best match happen because I want to find games quickly, and if that means I have to play on a different server sometimes and deal with a little bit of input lag, that's fine. Hopefully I'm not playing, you know, all the way in Australia, Singapore, right? Or even Brazil. But, you know, playing somewhere in the United States is typically fine, at least for me. Because, again, I live on the East Coast. So East Coast is my ideal. Central is fine. Western is okay. Anything beyond that, I'm hoping I don't get matched into, but I'll play it if it happens. Observer and replay. I just leave this at default. It's very common to change these to the WCS 3.0 or Pro 2020 in order to get those type of observer interface and replay interface, but I just leave it at default. It's fine. Hotkeys. All right. So hotkeys, you are free to do whatever you want. What I did is I allow toggle conflicts, so that way, if I so choose, I can do things like change the hotkeys for siege mode and unsiege mode on siege tanks and have them use the same hotkey. So for example, I can have E be siege and I can also have E be unsiege, right? As long as you allow toggle conflicts. If I turn this off, I would not be able to have E be both. It's very common to assign things like Zerg burrow to the same hotkey and Zerg unburrow to the same hotkey. It's very common to have the siege tanks be the same hotkey. I'm used to the more default hotkeys, ED in this case, but if you're new to the game, feel free to simplify things, toggle the conflicts, make them the same hotkey for you. A little bit easier to learn. Yeah. Now, as far as other hotkeys go, I don't really change any hotkeys. Again, I'm used to them. For Protoss, I would recommend, I don't personally do it because, again, I'm used to it, but I would recommend changing the, where is it? The robotics facility. I would recommend changing the Immortal hotkey to build an Immortal because it's all the way on I. And if you are right-handed like I am, you're going to be using your keyboard with your left hand and your mouse with your right hand, right? And I is on the right side of your keyboard. Ideally, you want most of your hotkeys on the left side of the keyboard. There's some really cool hotkey systems that I'll let you guys Google if you want. Particularly, there's the Core, which is a hotkey system that maximizes the amount of efficiency on the hotkeys. There's the Core Lite, which is a little bit easier to set up, a little bit less harsh. And then the game itself has also some default settings that might be helpful. A lot of players play on grid, which basically moves everything to the left side. Or for lefties, moves everything to the right side. And then there's classic for like classic Starcraft. There's the standard, which is typically what I follow with minor changes. So the things that I changed are mostly in global. So in global, you can see there's some red here because I unhotkeyed some items, right, in order to make the changes I made, and I'm okay with the things that aren't hotkeyed. But anyway, the things that I changed are in camera. I changed the create location hotkeys to make them easier to Shift F1 through Shift F8. A location is a hotkey that you use in order to set a specific camera location, so wherever you're looking. So if you're looking at your main base, and then you set a location hotkey to that main base that you're currently looking at, and then you jump over to your army to manage your army, and you want to quickly hop back to that particular base, you can use the location hotkey to jump back to that location you set, and you'll jump right back to that main base. So create locations, I set to Shift F1 through Shift F8. A lot of people use Control F1 through Control F8. Do whatever works for you, but I do recommend create location hotkeys in a way that you will actually use. Jump to location I also changed just to match F1 through F8, and that caused a lot of hotkeys to become unbound, particularly things like the idle worker and select army units. The show all life bars, ally life, and enemy life bars hotkeys I also unbound because I made changes to, where is it? To top bar powers. These are on the right side of the keyboard, but they're easier than the defaults, which are Control plus something, like Control plus X, Control plus V, that kind of thing. I changed them over here to the right. That's fine. But these hotkeys unbound these other ones. And again, I'm okay with these. Select army units by default is set to F2. If you don't change the hotkeys, it's easy to get in the habit of using F2 to just grab all of your army and then tell your army to do something. So I'm actually okay with unbinding this because it forces me into the habit of using what are called control groups, which I'll explain in more depth in another video. So yeah, those are the settings that I have. Feel free to copy, feel free to tweak, feel free to change, completely up to you. But those are the settings I have. As far as graphic settings, one other thing I wanted to mention is you can tweak them to your liking. There is something you guys can Google, and you'll find a Team Liquid article about it that's called hybrid settings. Hybrid, basically what it does is it maximizes visibility and cleanliness on the screen. So it's low settings, but with better lighting in order to make certain things like invisible units easier to see. So if you set everything to low, a lot of pro players set everything to low in order to maximize the frames per second that StarCraft runs at, because StarCraft is a very fast game. So you want as many frames per second as you can get, so that way you can perform as many actions and see what's happening as fast as you can. So a lot of pro players play on low settings, like everything low. The hybrid settings are basically the same as low settings, but with tweaks to the lighting. By tweaking the configuration file of StarCraft 2. It's not illegal to do this. You can do it. It's fine. You won't get banned. I promise. I've used them in the past. But yeah, you tweak your config file based off of that article that you'll find for hybrid settings, and it will make the game more clear. It does impact the campaign a little bit, so if you're planning on playing the campaign, don't use hybrid settings yet. But if you're planning on playing competitive multiplayer, hybrid settings can be nice. It makes the game just look clean, right? Extreme graphic settings like what I got is going to have a lot of particle effects. It's going to be a bit messier. It might be more difficult for me to see things, but I'm going to play on extreme so that way when I make videos for you guys, the game looks its best, right? And I don't mind the little bit of gameplay disadvantage I get, because honestly, I'm not good enough for that to really matter. So, all good. Anyway, that's everything. And so yeah, those are the settings. That was the announcement at the beginning of the video. We did some tutorials. In the next video, I'm going to start playing through the campaign on normal, just to, again, get out of the RTS rust that I have, to shake off that rust, get back into the RTS genre as a whole, and get better and better at it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.